see if it goes. There we go. Okay. All right. We're live. Just kidding. We're just recording. Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the channel. Today, I'm joined by a very special guest. He is your Star Wars novel expert. He is a BookTube veteran with over 980 videos posted, nearly 10,000 subscribers at the time of recording this. He's not only an educator by trade, but he is an educator by choice for us laymen here on YouTube. But on top of all of that, he is a friend of the channel. So I'd like to welcome Mr. Jonathan Cohn, and then I'll add in applause.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. I need you as a hype man. Yeah, you'd make a good wingman, I'm realizing.
Yeah. Anytime, just give me a call. I'll see what I can do. So I just kind of want to start off. I don't plan on doing anything like super formal or anything. I love your channel. I love being able to have conversations with people. And I know that for us book nerds, it's kind of hard to find other people in our circle that want to talk about books, So I just love having conversations with not only interesting people, but genuine individuals. So I just want to start off by asking a simple question, which is that I know that you had a very exciting summer. And so are things kind of starting to settle down? Like, have you had a pretty decent summer? I know school's about to ramp up and stuff, but otherwise, has the dust kind of settled a little bit?
Yes and no. If you don't know, I had to get a new job at a new school, and I moved across states, and it was an ordeal. And there was also some family stuff that happened. So yes, mostly it's settled down. We teachers went back this week, but students come back on Wednesday of next week, and so we are in the crunch, of getting stuff ready for it. But it should be a good fall. I'm in a very good place for this fall.
So is this one of those times where you're kind of looking forward to work because you're about to get in a routine?
Yes. I was kind of in a routine in summer, surprisingly, but I'm excited because once I get involved in like teaching the classes, and I'm like doing it every day, then I feel less nervous about the next day. The first couple of weeks, I'm just so nervous that I'm going to mess up. But once I get used to it, I'm like, all right, I know how the lesson plan design is. And this school does a lot of feedback where like we meet with our fellow teachers and our administrators, and they'll say, all right, we want you this week to adjust to this week, just like they're very collaborative. And I like that because I want to know if I'm doing something wrong.
Sure. Yeah.
So I appreciate that they're very much, hey, we'll come alongside and help you out.
Yeah. Well, that's like where I work. We get an annual review or whatever. And every time I've been working there for 13 years, and every time I go in for my review, they'll like, hey, you're doing a great job. Okay. Hey, real quick. What are some things that I'm doing that you want me to do less of? And what are some things that I'm not doing that you'd like me to do more of? Like, let's get specific. And they're like, nothing, you're doing fine. I'm like, that is not the answer that I'm looking for at all. Like, I want to know what are some things because there clearly are some things for everybody, like help me to grow. And they're just like, no, you're fine. State government. So
and then you always run the risk that you're told, oh, you're doing fine. And then they say, yeah, fortunately we have to let you go. And I'm like, what? And they're like, yeah, you were doing a great job. We just, we want to go in a different direction. It was like, what? Like what?
Yeah, that's awful. I'm sorry, but hey, new opportunities very well could lead to some fantastic things. I think they absolutely will. So if it's all right with you, what I would like to do is, rather than us just like nerd out about a bunch of books, which we absolutely can, but for those of anybody that is watching this, by the way, you guys probably don't know who I am, and y'all know who Jonathan is. So I shouldn't have to be like,
it's on your channel. Of course they know who you are.
Yeah. But if y'all don't know Jonathan has been a busy man this summer. And so he's been just like Mr. Interviewer, you've been interviewing everybody, and it's, I know there's a lot of work that goes into that. And so I kind of want to just see if we can just maybe flip the script a little bit and say, hey, yes, let's nerd out about books, but maybe let's just find out a little bit about Jonathan. Because, like just when I first started watching your channel, it was probably, I didn't realize I was probably watching not long after you had started. I was just like,
oh, really?
What does he do for a job? Like he's mentioned several times, like little things. And then finally I just outright asked you on like a live stream, you're like, I'm a teacher. We're like, oh, well, that makes perfect sense, but otherwise I kind of just want to maybe just probe a little bit, nothing like what's your social security number and your address, but just little things like for instance, with education, what drove you to want to be an educator?
Well, you could say it's like it's in my veins because so many of my family members are educators. My dad, for my whole life and for most of his, has been a private school administrator. He's either been a principal, headmaster, or superintendent. Headmaster, superintendent, depending on what area, what their title is, but it means the same thing. And so he's been doing that his whole life. And so education's been a very important part of my family. My sister, her whole life, she's a lot older than me. Her whole adult life has been a math teacher, and her husband a professor. And so like it's always been part of the family. And then at a very young age, when I was 10 and 11, my grandparents, I lived in Arizona at the time. They lived in DC, the DC area. And they flew me out 2 summers in a row to DC. And we did a tour of like the East Coast historical stuff. So we went to Civil War battlefields, we went to Revolutionary War battlefields, we went to museums, we went to see ships and stuff. It was great. And I was already I was interested in one part of history, and that was Gettysburg. That's all I cared about.
Really?
But yeah, because I love that movie Gettysburg.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Movie.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
And so I just kept rewatching that over and over. They were like, let's foster this love that he has. So they got the history bug kind of going. And then ulterior motives there. And then I really got into that. And then so that's half, not even half, that's part of it. Then in high school, I got super into a TV show called The West Wing.
Oh, sure.
Which, like, for political nerds was like, it doesn't get better than that. And so even if I disagree with, most of the worldview, it's still a great show. And so the West Wing was like, I wanted to be a government teacher, but then I was like, I want to do a history teacher. So I went to college to get a government degree, and then I got my master's in education, and with the focus on history, so that I could do both. I could go back and forth. And ironically, despite me knowing, U.S. history and government, every year I've taught world history, and I'm like, how did this happen? It's great. I love it, but it's just funny.
At some point they're going to let you teach on Gettysburg.
That's exactly.
I'm going to force their hand.
I'm going to get it into the world history curriculum.
Gettysburg 101.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, I will definitely say that you can tell, like you can, the way you present is, there's some people that I've talked to on here that have told me numerous times, they're like, I hate public speaking. I'm like, really? Because that's what you're doing. And to me, like I think it's way harder to just look at a camera and try to have a conversation with somebody that does not exist out there. That's way more difficult than just even standing up in a room full of people. But you can tell when you're talking that you're comfortable. You're comfortable being able to present, and even the way, like your reviews, you break them down in such a way that it's not just analytical, but it's like you're not just conveying information. Like you're teaching us. You're like, okay, this is good. Here's the parts that it's good, but here's why it's good. And that's the important part,
Well, it's the biggest thing of a review is you're trying to essentially sell the book. You're trying to explain why people should read it. And it's a very tough thing, especially with the concept of spoilers, of how do you sell enough of the book without giving away the goods and tipping the hand too much. I just filmed a book review recently, and the book doesn't come out for a while, and so I'm like, oh my goodness, like talking about what makes the book good. There was a little bit of, you got to trust me, just trust me that this part of the book was good. But that, you have to explain enough. And so I started out just writing my reviews for Goodreads
Yeah.
and Facebook and stuff. And so I was writing long posts, and I was kind of structuring them almost like an essay almost. And then
Yeah.
I was like, well, for the BookTube channel, I can just basically take whatever I'm writing and just say it, because I kind
Yeah.
of know what, like, it's not word for word, but I
Sure.
do know people who just read, who are like just
Yeah.
monotone word for word the review. And I've tried that one or twice, and I was like, that's not going to work. So I just
Yeah.
I know what I want to say with it, and just do that in the video. And if you kind of just forget that the camera's there, it's
Well,
for me at least, it's fine.
that's what so I've got people that I work with that, they're like, "Hey, I saw that you have a YouTube channel." And of course they're roasting me about it or whatever. I'm
Of
like,
course,
whatever.
of
Like, you're
course.
not going to roast me any harder than I've already done myself, But with that being said, I'm like, that they were asking a little bit about how how you discuss and present and that kind of stuff. I'm like, and one of them actually said, "I don't see how you spend 20 minutes talking about a book." And I was like, dude, I could spend
How do I
like,
not?
yeah, I have noticed gradually my videos have gotten longer, and I'm having to like reel
Mhm.
myself in. And I said, keep in mind that this is a book that I've just invested sometimes, like 40, 50 hours into pouring into this book or whatever. And
Right.
like, you're going to grab about 10 minutes of me talking about this. Don't watch it.
Well, there's an element of, you want to be thorough enough
Yeah.
to make sure that you're not just saying, I liked it, book good, which unfortunately I've had a few of those videos that they were not
Yeah.
good videos, because I didn't talk enough about the books. And then you also don't want it to be so long-winded that people are like, okay, just
Well, so one of the things that I've tried to like, I'm like paying attention to some of the minutia of a couple of your videos, because you do so many Star Wars and Star Trek novels. And I have only read, I'd say, less than 10 Star Wars novels at this point. But you can only say so much about a Star Wars book without going into spoilers and be like, it's Star Wars. If you like Star Wars, you'll like this book, And
yeah.
so I'm
And
like, man,
it
how he's
depends
able
on
to.
like the type of Star Wars book it is.
Hmm.
Because if it's the a standalone, like you
Hmm.
have behind you, Mall
Yes.
Lockdown, which is a
Yeah.
great book, love that one. But if you have a book like that, you can talk about a decent amount of
Hmm.
it, because it's kind of standalone, and you can talk more about the premise and stuff. But if you're talking about book 18 of the New Jedi Order, which is already building off of all this other stuff, you really, like, even talking about the setup of the book is dangerous, because
Yeah.
it kind of gives away some spoilers about the previous stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's like there's an art to how to explain enough without giving it away.
Hmm. So this kind of gets me to to ask this. That is, so what made you particularly? What made you go? You know what? I've watched enough videos of other people talking. Like, I'm gonna give it a shot. Like, what kind of was your launching pad?
So uh I was, in 20, I really started watching BookTube officially. Like, I'd watched a few Star
Hmm.
Wars reviews before this, but in 2018, when I was 2018 and 2019, when I was reading through the Wheel of Time, I got into watching Daniel Green's reviews of
Hmm.
them, and then I started watching Murphy Napier. And so I was watching the two of them, and I really liked the way they were talking about books there, and I was like, this looks like a lot of fun. And
Hmm.
Murphy did a video breaking down like how BookTube works, and how, like,
Hmm.
the money works and stuff. And I was like, wait, there's a chance I could get paid for this.
Oh yes, yeah, I
uh
remember that. Yeah,
uh
and people will send you books for
yeah, people
free.
send it for it's free. So I thought about that, and I was also in competitions with people. So it started out in 2019. It was me and one woman, and we decided to see, hey, who can read the most books. And then in
Mm.
2020, we increased it to like 5 people. And then in 2021, we were gonna increase it to like 20 people, but it got too many for us to do the competition properly. So we just kind of like do it on your own. But that competition got me writing the reviews. It got me reading really fast. And I was like, I have enough content to do it.
Sure.
And I looked up and I was like, I know I already had the microphone from my podcasting days. So I was like, I have the lighting. I have bookshelves behind me. I can make this work. And so I said, I was in college at the time. I was getting my master's degree and I was moving from one apartment to the next. I was like, this is like a clean slate, an opportunity for me to start a booktube channel. And so I did. And it's ironic because I've gone through phases of being known for different things. When I first started, the only videos of mine that were picking up were the Star Trek reviews, and nothing else was taking off. And I would schedule a lot of those because that was the stuff that was taking off. And then all of a sudden, the Star Wars stuff came, and so that became the big stuff. And to an extent, that's still the biggest stuff. But every once in a while, I'll have something way overperform. Like I reviewed Sunrise on the Reaping. That's the new Hunger Games book. That's not my audience. That is by far my most watched review of a book. And my number 2 is Wind and Truth. And I'm like, well, I guess I have new audiences that are coming to it. So I don't always, it's hard to gauge which videos are always. Sometimes I know, like sometimes I'm like, this ranking video is really going to do well. But sometimes I'll be like really excited about a project and it tanks. And then I'll have another project that I'm just like, I guess I'll make this, and it does well. And I'm like, well, I guess that worked out.
So did you is there a video that you can think of that you have that like, whoa, that took off? Like, is there one where you're like, okay, this is picking up steam, or was it just a gradual? I say, was it? Because it's both, I'm sure, but it's definitely much more of a grind. Like people tend to forget that consistency is important. And like when y'all look at Jonathan's channel, you've posted at least 3 videos a week for 3 years. I'm like, dude, this guy, like, you know how hard it is for me to post 2.
It's actually about the algorithm. That's one of the things that forces me to do it, is because if you get out of habit, the algorithm punishes you.
Right.
There was
people will say stuff like, hey, you posted a new video, but I didn't even see it come up. And it's like, what in the world? And I've heard that several times.
There was one YouTuber, he's not even in the booktube space, but he's the guy that does the kill count videos. James A. Janice. He talked about how during the strikes in 2023, he stopped posting and then just cut it off. And when he came back at the same level, the same type of videos, the same movies he was discussing, like in the same series as others. But they were tanking. And it was because if you get out of habit, even for a week, YouTube will punish you. And so my personal rule is, generally I do 4 videos a week. I started with 3, I increased it to 4, and I said I do 4 a week. And
in the past month, you've done 5.
When I go to conventions, which was one of those crazy parts of the summer, was I went to LibertyCon, which is a great convention. They're sold out now, so sorry, you can't get a ticket. But they're great convention, and I did 15 interviews there. A ton. Oh, that was a story.
I'm sure it was a lot of work, but it was a lot of work. Nice that you're like, hey, I've got a little bit of a backlog here.
Yeah. Now here's the surprising thing. you wouldn't expect this on YouTube. Interviews with authors specifically are the dead bottom of the of the barrel. Dead bottom. Obviously, like if I was to go, when I interviewed Larry Correia or Timothy Zahn, those ones popped. But unless it is a bestseller, even if it's like a mid-list author, even when I interviewed like Dan Wells, bottom of the barrel. Just people just do not watch them. It's really, I don't understand why, because I would think, hey, it's a conversation video.
Yeah.
That's more engaging than a single person in front of a camera. But something about like the click-through rate, people, even if they know the author, it's just, I don't know what it is with YouTube, but it's so hard. And so those are always the worst performing videos. So like I didn't make any money off of those videos,
Sure.
to be honest. And so it was more just do it for the exposure, for the
Sure.
opportunity to meet authors, make connections and stuff. But yeah, it's tough when you do that. And those are the least watched. And I also feel bad because, I want the people to see those authors and see them be able to talk. And it's always so sad when those videos underperform. And then I'll have a ranking
Yeah.
video that does crazy well.
Yeah,
And
I know so I've had several friends of mine that have told me the same thing. Like, hey, you need to do like early on. They're like, hey, do a top 10 this, do top 10 that, do top 5 this, talk about some negative things because it just
yeah,
does crazy. I'm like,
it does.
man, I
It
really
does.
don't want to do that, And I'm like, my catalog, because I only started reading. I think I started reading it might have been 2020. Yeah, I think it was 2020, 2019. I'd taken my kids to the library for the first time, and I was like, man, I had not sat down and read a novel in quite a while. And so I picked up the Miss Peregrine books. I don't know why. I was just like, hey, this looks interesting, and I like Harry Potter, so sure, I'll give this a try, and was hooked. And then I'm like, hey, let's see what else I'll find or whatever. But I'm a slow reader. I've said that 100 times. I know people are like, they're tired of hearing it. They're like, well, you still read 4 or 5 books a week. It's like, yeah, it's because I'm not like, I don't watch TV. I don't do like, I'm at work. When I'm at work, I'm doing work. And then I read after I put my kids to the bed and my wife has picked a good movie for her to watch. And then I settle in for a couple hours, and I just do that consistently. And then you finish books over time. But I'm like, I just did not like, I don't have enough backlog to sift through to do top 10s and stuff. And really, like, that's not really what I'm interested in. I like talking about the books that I read. I don't like talking around books. And I know that tends to be kind of, I don't want to say the popular thing right now, but I guess it kind of is, people are just saying, like, if you will talk around the books that you've read and not specifically talk about the books that you've read, those tend to be the videos that perform better. I'm like, man, that stinks.
Well,
Because I don't.
the reasoning is because if you do an actual book review, especially if it's spoilers, but if you just do a regular book review, people will see that. And unless they're interested in that book
Right.
or are a hardcore fan of you, they'll be like, I don't need to watch that video. But if they see a top 10 fantasy series, I wonder if my favorite made it on the list. I wonder what his controversial picks are. What does he leave off the list? And so those types of videos by nature just are appealing to broader audiences because you're talking about more than a single book. And there's also kind of a surprise value. What's going to make the list or not?
There's almost a reward in it.
There's a reward. Viewer. Yeah. And then also it's just the algorithm itself as a whole punishes the word review and promotes the word rank or top. If you use top or rank, it just puts
you want top 10 anything, it's going viral,
I know one reviewer who tried not ever using the word review in his videos titles and he tried, but the problem was it felt like it was gaming the system. Like I understand why he did it, but it also, like, to his audience, I think it felt like, just call it a review. Just review it. It's not.
This is a Way of Kings discussion.
Yes.
Yeah. Q&A. Except for I'm only asking and answering the questions by myself.
Exactly.
So that you posted a bunch of videos. Is there a video that you can like that is sticking in your mind? It's like, I put a lot of work and effort into this, and it just didn't take off. Is there one that you're like,
there's several.
Specifically, what's give me a couple, because I'm gonna add them to my watch later, which is already backed up anyway. But I'm just curious because how consistently you post, and I know the effort that goes into these videos and all of that, and to see when you post a video that's 20 minutes long, but really you've got a couple of hours, if not 10 hours invested in this on top of your prep time and all this other stuff. And then 14 people watch it. You're just like, oh, what? So you
mean it from that perspective, like one that underperformed, but I wish more people.
Yeah. Is there something like, I'm proud of this video and it just it just didn't get traction like I wanted it to.
Oh, that's different. Oh, that's I was thinking like a video that like I did, and I'm like, oh man, I wish people hadn't seen that. Okay, those are two very different. Two
Please
very
answer
different
both.
criteria. Yeah. Well, I'll tell you the other one, because it's off the top of my head, was so I was so excited. I got to interview one of my favorite authors, not just his Star Wars stuff, but his original science fiction, Timothy Zahn. He's great. He's such a great writer. His like if he didn't have the Star Wars, if he just had his original science fiction, he would be a top author for me. But his Star Wars stuff's good. But I got to interview him, and I knew it was going to be a big interview. And I messed up the audio in the interview. And
Oh
no!
Like, oh,
crap. And there's no way to fix it.
Oh
and so
man!
I was like, I had to put a disclaimer at the beginning saying, "Look,
Knife in the heart,
great,
man. That stinks."
Now that his audio was great. My audio was awful.
Man.
So yes, that's one. Off the top of my head, of the ones, reversing the question, the one you actually asked, which was, what's one that like I put a lot of effort into and not as many people watched. I'm trying to think of like a series that I'm really into that people just aren't like getting into, and I'm like, man, I wish y'all would get into it, because a lot of these, they perform fine, and the reviews. Sorry, you're making me think.
Don't bother me any.
I'm looking through my list and thinking like, what's the stuff? Oh, okay, I got it. The Nightingale and the Falcon series.
Yes.
This is the series by Stephen Arion. I can actually pull off the first one. It starts with the Judas Blossom.
Yep.
It's one of my favorite books I've read recently, and I think that this should be like top tier. Like this author should be read by everyone, and there are some on BookTube who've read him, but his stuff's not taken off, sadly. And I'm like, man, I wish y'all could. And I interviewed him.
Okay, well, I had the Judas Blossom on like in my cart when it first came out, and then I can't remember who it was. It might have been somebody like Mike or something like that. They were just kind of like mixed on it, and so I was like, okay, I'll take it off. And I think the past couple of weeks since the third book's come out and you've been talking about it, it's back in the cart. So
good.
So
good.
Yeah. So okay, I plan to jump on that one.
I interviewed the author, and as I said, interviews just the reviews of this series didn't do amazing, but they did about what book reviews. Like book reviews are a step up, unless it's one of your most viewed stuff, like for me, Star Wars does it. But other than that, most book reviews are the step above interviews in viewership, but they're below like TBRs or reading reviews or book hauls and stuff. And then at the top is way above it all is rankings.
Sure.
But like this was a series I'm like, man, I really wish people had watched more of that video to see it and could see how great this book series is, because I'm trying to spread the word about it. And if people didn't click on the interviews, they didn't click on the reviews as much. Oh well,
man, yeah, those stink, because it's like you get. I mean, that's one of the things that I've considered to be would be a crazy highlight, is to get to talk to some of the authors that you like. I mean, maybe it's just more interesting to me. I don't know, but it's like I would think the same thing, because like I know long form content is taking a back seat right now because people's attention spans, but I genuinely have a difficult time wrapping my head around that, because like I love turning on some of your interviews or your discussions with individuals about a book, sometimes about books I haven't even read, because like I'm not a big Star Trek guy, but it's just because it's not what I grew up with. And so when I've started listening to you, like you and your other two friends, you posted it just a couple of days ago, a discussion that you guys had anyway. So I was just like, I'm going to turn this on my commute on the way to work and on the way back. And I'm like, okay, well now I have to read this book, and I don't get how that's not connecting with people, especially when you get to hear, out of the horse's mouth, so to speak, like the intent of things. Like that's really interesting to me, because as a consumer of the book, it's some of it is speculative. Like obviously you can get quite a bit of intentionality from what the author is writing, but sometimes you can't, or sometimes it's surface level. And so then when you get to hear from guys like Dan Wells and Timothy Zahn and Stephen Airy and all these guys, it's like, oh, so this just added a whole new layer to the book, and I'm more invested because I like you as an individual.
Exactly. And authors love it when you interview them, especially if they don't have like the biggest sales, because this is an opportunity to get the word out about them. But again, unless it's a top tier like a Sanderson or the top tier ones, they just don't perform well. And I think, unfortunately, that's driven a lot of booktubers away from interviews. That unless it's someone that they know is going to succeed well, that they just won't interview them. And the sad thing is that those authors who are gonna perform the best don't need the marketing. Their sales are fine. Their sales are already huge. The ones who need it are the ones that are gonna tank for you. And it's more of you're taking a risk by doing a video that's not going to do well, hoping to help that author out, get new readers, get a discussion going, and also getting if you get one reader who's read their books and happens to Google search, then maybe they'll find my video and say, hey, he interviewed that author that I love. Maybe I'll give him a chance. Like, I do get a lot of subscribers off of those videos, even if I don't get a lot of views. So that's where the help comes from.
Well, so then let me kind of, I don't think this is a softball really, but maybe it is. But okay, so as the last time I looked, which was just a few minutes ago, prior to coming on discussing things with you, and we're going to pretend like we weren't talking for 30 minutes before.
40 minutes, yeah, right.
But so you've got 987 videos, which is like insane. But I would say, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, please, probably 70 to 80% of your videos are book reviews.
Yeah. And it's somewhere in that range.
So let's say you have 700 to 800 book reviews on your channel. And so if there's been quite a bit of discussion around this as of late about, well, booktubers book reviews don't do well anymore. So people aren't doing them, and they're just doing top tier lists or weekly updates, which is crazy to me that people would rather hear about like how my week of reading was just in a general sense than the book I actually read. They're more interested in, like, again, speaking around books. Anyway, so I say all that to sort of preface, like, how is that going to affect the way that you like the type of content that you produce at all? Or you're just like, hey, I'm here to do book reviews?
I'm very cognizant of the business element and trying to maximize. However, I feel for instance, I made one personal goal of reviewing every book I read, at least in the fiction sense. I don't review all the nonfiction,
which is awesome, by the way.
Yeah. I did have to break my rule recently, but I could tell you off the air why that was.
Yeah. But, I heard in your weekly update last week. I was like,
I had to break the rule, but generally I generally, like, if I read like 140 books that year, I have 140 reviews that year.
Yeah, that's crazy.
But it's part of that. The other thing is book reviews tend to build a lot of integrity with the audience, which is that, hey, he's not just doing the rankings. He also has the full discussion. And there is an audience for reviews, and they appreciate, and they will, a ranking video will pop, get a lot of reviews, and it will get a lot of subscribers for a short period of time. And then if you only have those videos, it actually like diminishes them. It will make it less likely people will watch those. But if you balance it with having some other forms of content as well, then people are more likely to stay subscribed, and they feel like there's a variety there. One thing is I was really influenced by Brian Lee Durfee, who has a terrific channel.
It's so good. Him breaking down his studio was one of my favorite videos of all time. It was he's like, and here's my piece of tape that I stick my phone to. If
there's ever a video that made me think, man, I could do this.
But 100%.
but one thing that's great about Brian is he's done the same thing of he puts a review almost every day, and when it's not a review, then he has a ranking here or there, or
Sure.
he has his TBR or not to TBR videos, and his audience has rewarded it because they trust him, and they're like, look, we know he really cares about them, and he's not just talking about books for the clicks. It's like two minds. You have to be cognizant of the business and okay, this is what's going to make money. But if that's the only goal, then people will kind of sniff that out and be like, yeah, he's not genuine about books.
Yeah,
he's genuine
chasing the
about money.
algorithm.
Chasing the algorithm. So that's why, you have to have kind of a balance, which is why I'm okay sacrificing some book reviews that don't do well, some interviews that don't do well, because they do help build integrity.
Yeah. Well, that's so like I mentioned this when we were talking off air or whatever you want to call it, but there's a radio show that I enjoy, and most people that have listened to me at all know that I only post 2 videos a week because that's about all I can get out right now. But I try to do one book review every week and then one sort of like a fun video or whatever. And it's because this radio show had mentioned that, if you don't have something informative or entertaining to say, then don't call into our show, which they put it much more, much nicer than that. But essentially that's what they were saying. And so I was like, okay, so I would like to do both. I would love to put, because when I started the channel, I was genuinely just thinking, okay, I don't want to be just another like voice in the void that's saying this book is good and here's why, because I'm not articulate enough. I'm not as well of a reader or, as quick as a reader, all these things. And so I'm like, unless I'm adding something different, which is why I was like, I would love it if somebody would produce some like content warnings for the books that they read. And so I brought that up. And a bunch of people were just like, yeah, maybe you should do it. And eventually I did. But I say that because now my book reviews tend to actually perform quite a bit better than the other ones.
Yes.
And
so
that's, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I have a theory because, are you familiar with the website Plugged In?
Yes. So that's
okay.
Plugged In and Common Sense Media. That's what I've told people. I want to be the Common Sense Media for books.
Yes. Okay. So, I have for years been, saying that we need a Plugged In for books, and Plugged In technically has some book reviews, but I mean, it's not their business model.
Yeah.
And with how many books are published, every day in the US, there's like 4,000 books published. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. There's
And
no way.
you can't read all of them. And there, especially with the way culture is going, it's really hard. I mean, sometimes you can look at a book and be like, yeah, that's not going to be appropriate. But sometimes you pick up a book and you're like, okay, this looks fun. And then you get to a scene and you're like, what?
Yeah.
And we need that Plugged In group, that person or group, that channel, to serve that role of saying, look, you want to know how heavy the language, the violence, the sex is in this book, I'll present it. And you're not necessarily completely judging, you're not saying, you're not allowed to read this. It's just saying, hey, this is the warning for those who do care about this. And there's some people who like hate trigger warnings, and I don't I don't want to put like trigger warnings for books necessarily, because that's I think a different thing. But appropriateness warnings, I think that it doesn't harm you to be like, look, my book has this and this in it, just be forewarned. That type of thing. And because the books don't do that, we need a Plugged In. And so when I saw your channel and you said a Christian reads, and you started doing the ratings of it, out of 10 has violence, I was like, yes, there's someone to do it. You can't cover all the books you need to, but you are doing a service. And
thank you.
I don't do that myself because my channel is just it's not structured like that, and that's not the goal of where I've done. But I so love that you do that.
Thank you.
So I'm like, yes, he does the Plugged In stuff. And so we need to get more people like you, and don't all of you read the same books. You're like, all right, you read the fantasy sci-fi, someone else does the other books.
That's one of the few things that I'm like, AI is actually going to be helpful here, because somebody can just upload their ebook and then we'll just kind of know,
but then we have to trust the AI.
I know.
Yeah, that is a whole other discussion.
So I would reach, let's see, I'm going to do something get off camera for a second. So I just got sent a book by an author, AC Wilson, which Sam over at iSamWise sort of got me in contact with him. And so Mr. Wilson, he sent me a message and he was like, hey, can I send you some books? And I was like, sure, absolutely. Like, I'd love to read them. He's a Christian author and all this. And so I get them. He wrote me such a gracious letter. Anyway, all this is like, everything was fantastic. But then when I looked at the book, I was like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. And so I don't know if my camera will pick it up. So on the back of the book, he has
that's great. I love that.
PG-13, and then he has like, you know, out of 5, sensuality, violence, language, and intense themes. And I'm like, that is the coolest, you know. I'm like, okay. So maybe I won't have a channel after too long, you know? But, which is, if that's the case, then awesome. Because the reason why I wanted to start doing this is because like, that's what I was looking for. I would have to, you know, I'd watch your channels, and I'd watch Mike's, and I'd watch Murphy, and I'd watch Daniel Green. I'd watch all these other people. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to look up as many reviews as I can on the book that I'm about to read and see if I can parse through some of like just their discussions of the book, of the sort of like the theme or the mood of the book. And maybe if it's not going to be for me. For instance, everybody was talking about Empire of the Vampire by Jay Kristoff for such a long time. So I'm
not sure you should be reading that.
So I just heard about it from Mike, right? And I was like, I say from Mike, like we're on me and Mike are buddies. No, like on his channel. And so I'm watching it and like ordered it, and I did not get to finish his review. Or maybe it was his weekly update, because he was just raving about how much he loved it, but not why. So I ordered the book, and I couldn't wait to read it, because I'm like, I love the kind of Anne Rice kind of stuff. And this is, you know, a little more modern, blah, blah, blah. So I was like, all right, this is going to be cool. And so I get it. Literally the day that I get it, Mike puts his review out, and he was like, man, if you guys don't like swearing, you will hate this book, because he invents swearing. And I was like, okay, Amazon returned. So I had purchased the book and returned it without even opening the front cover.
And this is especially with authors who use language in their books. And I've had some that don't understand why it's such a big deal. And they're like, you know, you spent time talking about that in your review. And it's like, well, to a lot of people like us, this is a part of our worldview. And it's something that, you know, we're not like, you know, if we see a single swear word in a book, we're not going to say, all right, burn the book. We don't say that. But we want to be cognizant of what we're putting in our brains, and we want to be careful not to be sinning, and careful not to be overexposed in certain things. And so to us, I appreciate it when I see a reviewer say, hey, look, this book has this stuff in it.
Sure.
And it may not be for you if you don't like that. And the authors are like, oh, that shouldn't matter to you. It's like, well, it's whether it shouldn't or not, it does matter to a lot of readers. And the one thing that you want less than someone who doesn't read your book is someone who reads it, hates it, and then keeps other people from reading it because they're so angry because they were misled or something.
Well, authors are so. This is called the Gwambi trilogy, by the way. I think that's how you pronounce it, by AC Wilson. It's the Gwambi tetralogy. So I did want to shout him out, because that was the coolest thing I'd ever seen.
Yes.
But it's authors, you know, they have to be, most of them, I'll say that most are well-versed authors have to be intentional with their articulation. You know, they're sitting there going through their online dictionaries and stuff of whether to say he snuck into the room, or he creeped into the room. I mean, these things. And so when they're throwing expletives in there, especially heavy ones, it's not unintentional. And so in my mind, I'm sitting there thinking, again, I'm not like, oh, you sinner, I'm not reading your book. Because if that's the case, I wouldn't read books.
Reading.
So that's not the case. But when it becomes extremely gratuitous, and obviously that's, you know,
it's different levels.
Yes. Yeah. But I'm sitting there thinking, you authors are so creative, and especially in science fiction and fantasy, because you guys are so creative. I love Sanderson's take on swearing, because he will take
his own.
Yes. It's like, I'm going to take this word that doesn't really mean anything to us, and I'm going to make this a curse. So I'm not actually cursing, but I am articulating to the individual the emphasis and those types of
Mhm.
things. Because, I explained this to somebody else. They were asking me about like the movies I watch, and they're like,
Mhm.
well, do you hold the same standard to your movies and TV shows? And it's yes, but it's still different because it's a different media. And
Mhm.
so I explained it to him like this, and this is this may be a horrible comparison, but I said, if you look at Pulp Fiction and you look at Saving Private Ryan, you look at these two films. Say Saving Private Ryan is probably more explicit than Pulp
Yeah.
Fiction is as far as quantity of expletives. But the the attitude, the demeanor, the
Mhm.
intentionality of the
Yes.
director, writer, all of that is not to be explicit. It's to elicit reality, right? And
Mhm.
so I had somebody say, "Well, I love Saving Private Ryan, but it's just so heavy with the language." And I understand that. And that's why I point them to like VidAngel and ClearPlay and those types of things. Like that's a great tool for you to use if you
Mhm.
still want to watch those, or just don't watch them. And I understand if you don't. But
Yeah.
I'll tell you what I would hate. I would hate if they're storming the beaches of Normandy and a guy sees his best friend that's been with him for 3 or 4 years in training. As soon as he gets off the boat, explode, and he goes, "Oh dang." Like
And he said,
that
or
would
even worse, if he says, "Blood and bloody ashes."
right, like that would make like that would pull me out of it so much, and it would just ruin the entire piece of artwork. And I think a lot of people, it would be a detriment not only to the art, but in that case it'd be a detriment to history. But I say that because I'm like, I won't watch Pulp Fiction, but I will watch Saving Private Ryan. And the reason is because of the intentions of the one that's writing, directing, whatever. And so the intentions of the author or the individual a lot of times is at least as important, if not more so, than the actual product.
Mhm. And it's not just with language. It can
Right.
go to violence. It
Right.
also can go to sexual elements in books. Like one of my favorite series I'm reading right now is the Kingsbridge series by Ken Follett, which
Hmm.
is historical
Yep.
fiction. And who boy does he include a lot of stuff like that
Sure.
in there. But it's almost like I kind of give it a pass because it's
Yeah.
him trying to depict what was happening at the time, and he's trying to show, as Mike would say, real life grimdark. And so
Yes.
to me, I'm like, I don't appreciate that he includes that, and I wish he wouldn't, but I understand it. And
Right.
then at the same time, I also read a romantasy, and specifically a
I'm
romance
sorry.
book, and and you know page for page, they both had a
Oh,
lot of that stuff in there,
sure.
but the intentionality of the romance was entirely different. Whereas
Right.
it did not, like, if I'm reading Pillars of the Earth,
Hmm.
it's not reading smut. It is
Right.
reading historical fiction that is
Yes.
depicting something. Whereas the other book felt like it was smut, and I was just like,
Yes.
there's a difference there. And so you
Hmm.
have to. Why having not only the ratings, because there are people who just would be like, either one, I'm out.
Right. Right.
But then there's also the element of, you want to have that discussion of, okay, it's in there, but you can handle it, or it's
Sure.
in there, but you can't handle it.
Yes. And then you have to have something to compare it to, because if I tell somebody, well, it's got a little bit of language in it. Well, what does that mean? Because a little
Hmm.
bit means something different to
Yes, to
everybody.
different
And
people.
so I'm like, yeah, I actually had somebody, because when I had first started posting videos, and I'm going to go back and actually edit them because we have the power of technology. But I actually used to title my videos, "Should Christians Read?" And
Right.
honestly, it was just in my ignorance, and like I'm green to YouTube or whatever. But the format for the most part was the same. I was just,
Hmm.
but I shouldn't have said the word should or shouldn't,
Right.
because it carries a moral obligation to it, because we don't have a moral obligation to read any fiction.
Right.
But at the same time, I didn't want it to come across as like, you should or you should not read this. And if you read this, you're a bad person or whatever. Like, that's not that. It was really for me to just go, okay. And that's when I texted a few of my friends, some people that I close personal friends, and some people I go to church with. And I was like, hey, let me throw this idea out there at you. And I was like, what if I kind of switched gears, and rather than me saying should or should not, and I get part of it was because it's like, ooh, it's kind of clickbaity, and a
Yeah,
Christian will
yeah.
click on it. I get that, and I don't care about that anymore as far as like,
Mhm.
okay. But I was like, instead, I'm going to say a Christian reads, because then I can just give you my perspective. And then I can, so somebody goes, well, it'd be great if you did, since you're saying you're going to be the common sense media of science fiction and fantasy, why don't you actually do that? And I was like, okay, that hurt my feelings a little. But at the same time, I was like, that makes sense. So I should break this down into, different tiers and categories and subcategories. And then, so I had somebody, my first video I posted where I had sort of this new system, this new rating system, somebody actually said, like, I love this style more because it's objective. And I was like,
Yeah.
well, it's still
Yeah. It's so
subjective.
subjective. Yeah.
It's still completely subjective, but it is a little more uh transparent to the audience. And so
I
that's
mean,
why I was like, oh, I'm
even
sorry,
a
go ahead.
movie, the ratings aren't
Mhm.
that detailed.
Right.
For example, as soon as you have two F words in a movie, it jumps up to R, and the
Yep.
difference between a movie that has two F words and 142 F words,
Yeah.
they're both getting R rated. And
Yes. Yes.
sometimes they say like severe language versus like heavy
Mhm.
language, but a lot of people just see the rated R.
Mhm.
And so that's why like being able to say like on a scale of like, how impactful was it in there, or how often was it, like
Yeah.
that's to me that's very valuable in
Yeah.
books.
Well, I've actually been asked a few times. People were like, "Hey, do you think that we should have these ratings on books?" And I'm like, again, it depends on, are you intentionally using the word should? Because
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think that they have some sort of moral,
Mhm.
the author, especially if they're a secular author, I don't think they have some sort of moral obligation to warn me about these things, because you're looking at least 50,000 words, and I'm not going to have them sit there and parse through
Right.
how many times do they say this word, or what, that's nonsensical and it's not realistic. And so I was like, well, for me, it's, and again, this is just subjective. If it's in the adult, like if it's adult fantasy, adult science fiction, whatever, you kind of have to just, tread lightly if those
Mhm.
things are a concern of yours. But now for kids, I've got a different opinion on that.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
but it's like, if you're like dipping your toes into, you know, if you walk over to the adult science fiction and fantasy section, um, and you pick up two different books, they, like you said, they can be so diverse in numerous things. But as a reader, you should kind of know that going into it, that there's going to be adult things in here. Otherwise, they would have written a children's novel or a YA novel or whatever. And I think a lot of times that's, I've heard like Mike say, well, YA is always like love triangles and all this other stuff. And while that there may be some truth in that, I also think when they label, if they're writing a novel that's YA, it's because they want to make sure that the reader knows we're not going into that territory here.
But the problem is that the lines got blurred with
Yep.
YA in the 2010s, and all of a sudden it was I can't just blindly trust that if I'm picking up
Mhm.
a YA book that it's going to be appropriate. And that was this also happened with movies and TV, where when things went to streaming, the it's loved a lot of streaming shows, but the problem was that they no longer had the restrictions that cable and
Mm,
networks had. Is they
sure.
had the restrictions. You had to make your show this appropriate, or you were not allowed to air it, or you would get fined. And
Mhm.
so, for the most part, I mean, we had HBO, but most part, the networks and the show, or and the cable, they kept everything appropriate. But as soon as it went to streaming, you no longer had that prohibition. And so you could be watching something like that was totally like it starts out totally, and they do this a lot, is they started out appropriate. And
Mm,
then as the season
yeah.
goes on, this stuff comes in and you're like, really, you lured me in with it.
Yep.
And they just want the clicks and the subscribers. And so I think books have done kind of the same thing, where we in the children's genres, I'm especially
Mhm.
frustrated when it happens in middle grade, but
Yeah,
also
right.
frustrated when it happens in YA, where that stuff gets in there inappropriate, what I would judge to be inappropriate for
Mhm.
that age group. And it's like you now make it so that it's harder to trust, and therefore now we need even more reviewers to be able to be upfront about this.
Mhm. Well, that's, and all, I have a feeling at some point, because, a lot of people have said, well, reading is such a, like, a video that Mike put out today. And he actually mentioned, I heard him say, well, reading is such a niche thing. And then you have these, like, science fiction and fantasy is even more niche inside this activity. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I agree, but it's actually gotten a little more popular over the years just because of, like, book talk and all these other things. People want to be part of the conversation. And then people realize, oh, wow, books, some of these stories and books are way better than me having to have my favorite TV show canceled after 3 seasons or whatever. And so, like, again, yes, I see that, but at the same time, I'm like, I've got a feeling, especially with the government, that they're going to see, oh, we can reach over here, like, hey, this needs some sort of a content type of council or whatever, is like we do with movies and stuff. I just don't know how they're gonna
And
enforce it.
here's the problem is, I don't, as much as I would love to have that, even on adult books, I would
Mhm.
love for publishers on their own to say, we're
Right.
going to include the appropriateness rating somewhere in the book. I don't want the government to do it for a couple of reasons.
Right.
One is because, with my political beliefs, I don't believe the government should have that role,
Right.
with their role.
Yes.
But the other element is, you run the risk that, what if they change it to mean something else, and the
Yep.
ratings start, what if they apply restrictions on
Yes.
ratings, and then all of a sudden, and at first you'd be like, well, yeah, I don't want books to be using swear words, so that's great. And then it's like, all right, now the restriction is if you're not including this in your book, or the
Yep.
restriction is if you do include this worldview. And that's why it's like, the charge for appropriateness ratings has to come, it will start with self-published
Mhm.
authors, and then when they move to indie publishers, like small presses,
Mhm.
then it'll spread to the bigger publishers.
Mhm.
That's the only way it's going to happen, that
Sure.
I see it. I don't foresee it happening any other way. It's going to start small and then build up. So that's
Well,
great that author did that. I
yes,
love that.
that's what I'm sitting there thinking, and I've mentioned this before, but it's in large part like where we send our money,
Mhm.
like, because for AC Wilson to do that, or for his publisher to, whoever it was that's like, hey, why don't we do this? Which is a great idea. I think just having that, they're going to see a bump in sales, or at least I would hope.
I hope so.
And yes, and which means that the books that continue to kind of lean into the depravity, they're going to keep doing that as long as it's profitable. Right? Like,
Mhm.
I mean, a company is going to do what's profitable, and they should. And so, well, to a degree,
Yeah.
in a
Right.
secular way, they're in the business to make money. And I understand that. So they're going to do what makes money. They're going to lean into that thing. And so when they see some of these authors leaning into some of these more controversial topics, and they start seeing their customer base withholding funds, that's when they start to kind of shift gears. And I don't want to pick on Brandon Sanderson, but he's an easy target because he's very
Yeah.
successful. He's good at what he does, but we've seen sort of this. I mean, it's not like this widespread thing, but the past couple of books he's put out, he's just, sprinkled some a few things in here that has been largely different from his worldview starting out.
And specifically just honing in on
Mhm.
language, because we were talking about,
Yes.
like, foul language, as that a specific. He
Yep.
has, in the last few
Yep.
books, particularly Wind and Truth, and I think Lost Metal, but, like, particularly Wind and Truth,
Yes. Lost
has
Metal as well.
seen a lot more real world language pop
Mhm.
up, and that did a lot of people, it bristled them, and it rubbed them the wrong way. And he even acknowledged, he was in his podcast with Dan Wells,
Yes.
the Intentionally Blank, and he said,
Yep.
yeah, that was the feedback that we got
Yep.
from that. Now, whether or not he takes that feedback immediately and the next Mistborn book is more appropriate, or
Mhm.
mix up the words, I don't know if it's going to be that quick, but
Sure.
he's at least seeing that that's the
Yes.
issue, and he's the type of author that, he wants to have the largest readership possible. So
Well,
he's not.
he said that, and it might have been that same podcast. He was like, "Look, I know this is a risk, and I know that risk is going to cause maybe some reward, and maybe some backlash, probably both, and we'll see what happens. And then it was like the next week, he's like, okay, I'm listening. Like,
Yeah.
and I think I don't remember if it was him or somebody else I was listening to, but he even said, whoever it was said that the audience trusted him. And that was the biggest thing. It's like these audiences trusted him to be able to go, hey, not only is this appropriate and fun, a fun book for me to read, but I can hand this to my young teenager, and he's good too. And he actually sort of, um, he understood and recognized. He was like, okay, I didn't really consider that all the way through. And now I've lost the trust of that reader.
Mhm.
And so again, it's like, why would you want to bottleneck your audience more? I don't understand why you wouldn't want to broaden your audience in every way you can. And because it's
And
profitable for you.
And there's also the thing of, I was saying when the TV shows would do it midway
Mm-hmm.
through the show, this was not the way that Stormlight or Mistborn started out.
Right.
And so people had, if this was in, say, one of the secret projects that the language stuff had kind of popped in, it would not have had the same impact because people are like, oh, this is different. But
Sure.
because it was a Stormlight project with Wind and Truth, they were like, hey, these foul words are in this book where you're supposed to be making up the foul words. Why are you doing this? And
Yeah.
so
We're
you're like,
8,000 pages invested. And now
right,
you want to throw this in
now
there?
you want to throw that in. So that's why it's like I don't think they should use it at all. But if you're gonna use that, at
Sure.
least don't do it in the middle of a series
Right.
that you hadn't been. That's why
Right.
I love the Wheel of Time, and I am so glad that he made up his own foul words for it,
Yes.
and he of course kept there's a lot of like implied stuff, but he doesn't get into the explicits
Mm-hmm.
with certain things, and I'm just like, thank you for not changing that, Robert Jordan, that you kept it you had a lot
Yeah.
of opportunity to. And then like comparing it to someone else, George Martin started off really
Yeah. Out
foul
the
in his
gate.
book
Yeah.
out of the gate. So it's not like people were like getting the book 5 and being like, what's this doing in here? It was like, nah, you knew what you were going in with that.
I'm gonna keep I'm gonna have to reel it in because I'm gonna keep going on this tangent forever. But I'm like all these conversations are conversations that we probably both had separately. I'm
Yes.
like that's what I've had these conversations with my friends that come to me that are kind of interested in reading, and they're like, I don't really know where to start. And then I'm like, oh, you got to read this, and then 2 weeks later I'm like, hey, wait, don't read that yet because actually, and they're like, what's going on? I'm like, it's mildly frustrating when I'm like, I wish I could just say, this is what you get. And right, like sort of with my reviews, it's like, here's a trilogy, here's a completed trilogy. This is kind of what you can expect. If that's not for you, fantastic. You have plenty of time and plenty of other options. Jump into those. But if that doesn't bother you, like, feel free. That's I just finished Jurassic Park a few weeks ago. And I've had a huge love for the movie growing up. And so when I read the book, I'm like, okay, this is going to be difficult for me to review because I could pretty much say, okay, all of the stuff that's in the movie is pretty much in the book. Maybe just like cranked up just a little bit on some of the violence, but otherwise, if you like the movie and you're fine with it, you can read the book. Done. So
That makes it easier.
yes, it definitely did. But because I'm going to chase rabbits the entire time, I'm like, all right, I'm going to reel it back in to Jonathan specifically because there are some things I've been really sort of like, I mean, I'm just selfish. I'm just gonna be honest. I'm just selfish with this interview or whatever. I'm like, I'm going to ask the questions that I want to know, and maybe other people want to know them too. But I recently was listening to a podcast with two actors, and they were discussing, success and failure of the work that they're involved in. And the one actor said, well, people don't realize that all the praise and all the backlash comes to whoever is sort of the star of the movie, when really we have nothing to do with it. We're just kind of a piece. And really it's the director and the writer that is.
Right.
And so something that maybe people don't realize unless they're posting videos on YouTube. And I was thinking about it when I heard this, is that for those of us that are on YouTube and are making videos, we are the actor, we're the director, we're the writer, we're the editor, right? We're
Mhm.
all of those things in one. And so your videos in particular are like, this is you saying, here is my specific and deliberate style that
Yeah.
I want to put out. And so I say all that to say, or to sort of pose this. I notice, and I think other people do too, that you don't edit your videos. Like you don't trim them is what I mean. Like
Yeah, I don't
you
trim
don't
them,
do
yeah.
yeah, you don't jump cut. You leave in the ums, you know, and like the first time I made a video, and probably for anybody that's ever done a YouTube video where they're talking to the camera, you're like, I cannot believe that I say the word 800 times in 3 minutes, you know? And so like I'm like, that is intentional. And I'm curious if is it because, and definitely could be both. Is it because you want to be like genuine and to be like, hey, I'm just having a conversation? Or is it because you're like, hey, that's too much effort. And here's my review.
Um, that's more because I'm lazy. But no, in serious though, I want it to be, for the most part, I want my videos to be as if it's like, oh, if I was going to pitch you, like
Mhm.
the book, I'm just like saying it. And unless
Sure.
I mess up, I royally mess up, I'm not going to cut it out because it's conversational.
Sure.
And so I keep in the ums and the uhs.
Mhm.
And I have gotten comments from people being like, "Man, you have a lot of that stuff in there." But when you're used to people who cut everything, they
Right.
trim it down. And also, my style of what I like in my videos is not the trimmed,
Right.
where I
Mhm.
cut every single thing where it's only
Yes.
like 10-second shots or something. Oh man. Can you imagine how much like with how many videos I make, how long that would take
I
me to
know.
edit?
I
Like
know.
it would cut into my reading, which would
Yes.
have
Yeah.
then it would cut into my reading, which would cut into the number of videos I can make. And so it would not be the right
It
move for me.
it is I, my friend, you know, it's
Yes.
like, because I am that guy 100%. Now I don't jump cut everything or whatever, but it is definitely that. I had a friend that uses CapCut, and I never. I'm a DaVinci Resolve guy, and I know a lot of people are like, oh, because there's a lot of. I've used it for other things, church things and stuff like that, so I was familiar with it. And so when I started working on editing videos, and I noticed I was saying all the time, it was easy for me to edit that out. And so I had a friend of mine who was like, hey, you need to try CapCut. And I said, well, the only way I would use that is if it automatically deletes out all my ums and repeat takes and all that kind of stuff. And he goes, it does that. And I was like, I'm
I'll
in.
do
And
it.
so I tried it for a month, and I noticed my videos were terrible. And it's in large part because it really sucked the life out of the
Yeah,
video.
it
Like
does.
it was very dry. And you know, like I've mentioned, I love making fun of myself. I love putting like bloopers
Mhm.
at the beginning of my videos, because or being like, I have said this one line 34 times and I can't get it right. Like, and then I go, hey, that's funny. Like I'm gonna show people that, you know, sometimes that occurs if you're not doing that. But the reason I say that is because your the genuine nature of your channel, I think, is like a high mark for a lot of people, because it's like, hey, he's just talking to us.
Yeah.
It's Jonathan, you know, just us talking. You're no different just talking to you than when I'm listening to you talking in your videos.
Yeah, and it is part of that I want that genuineness, but I kind of thought, some of the videos I watch, Brian Lee Durfee, he says, we'll
Well,
edit all
edit and
that out in
post.
post. And then he
So
does it.
good. So
And
good.
I'm like, you know what? Let's do that. There are times I will. For instance,
Sure.
a few weeks, actually it was last week, I made out a video and I totally forgot that I royally coughed up in the middle of the video,
Oh,
and it was awful, and I accidentally uploaded it. And thankfully, one of my friends, you said, hey, you should have edited that part out. And I was like, of course, like normally when I cough, I do
sure.
try to get that, but
Sure.
I went back and was like, oh no, I included that. So if something egregious, or if I one thing I will occasionally cut is I'm terrible with names. It's just
Mhm.
a weakness of mine. And so I forget, even like, you just read the book, yeah,
It
today,
doesn't,
and I'm like, doesn't matter. I'm gonna forget the character's name. So if I have to like go up and look through the book and like try to find the name, nobody wants to see me doing that for like a minute trying to find
yeah,
that. So occasionally I'll cut that out. But if it's just like ums and uhs, or me
sure.
stumbling a little bit on something, I'm like, you know what? People are okay with that. And if they're not, they're probably going to have some other reason not to like the
Yes.
channel.
Well, like,
And
and so it's because of your channel and you deliberately leaving that in, it has made me reconsider editing mine out. And in large part because it is such a time sink to go in and trim.
Mhm.
But then, maybe the average viewer won't realize that trying to cut that and then blend it into the next clip without it
Blending it is
seeming like,
hard.
yeah, and it's a ton of work and and you're just, by the end of it, you're like, okay, well, 13 people watched that video anyway, so it's not even really
Yes.
worth it,
Yeah,
And so it's like,
there
okay,
are people who have the super edited videos, and I
mhm.
love them. Caption and Words,
Yes.
great
Oh, Jay,
channel,
yeah,
super
fantastic.
super edited, well done. But
Yep.
it's a style. It's his
Yes.
style. And if I had now, if I my channel blows up and I have the money to hire an editor, then
Yep.
I would like, of course, I'd love to do that. But for right
Absolutely.
now, it's just not. Just the style doesn't fit as well. So
Well, so, like, just as for instance, and I hope people watch this because it was hilarious to me. But when I watch this stuff back and first I'm like, oh, what a dummy, but then I'm like, hey, that's funny. And so rather than just sort of trying to hide it, I'm deliberately going to draw attention to it to let everybody know
right.
it's like, number one, I'm not taking myself too seriously. I'm some random guy in Alabama that reads books about dragons and wizards, So
Mhm.
I'm like, let's just all kind of take a breath and calm down a little. But I was recording, I think it was yesterday, my review for the Dark Lord Rise of Darth Vader book, and
Yes.
I was halfway through it, and I looked at my computer because it wasn't plugged in, and I'm halfway in my review, and my computer's about to die, and I was like, oh no. So I can't even stop recording. So I run in the other room and grab my charger. And then I have to try to plug it in, and I'm in my bedroom. So there's lights and cords, and I'm going
Are
to
you
trip.
keeping
So,
it in the video?
oh my goodness. So I had to jump off of my bed to get back to the seat. And then I fell and threw a book because it was sitting there, And so I'm like, you know what? I'm going to cut that. Like I had cut that part, and I go, rather than hit delete, I'm going to pick this up and put it at the front. So that way people see how ridiculous I am, and how ridiculous sometimes this is, And so it helps
Yes.
me it does, number one, it helps me, it keeps me humble, but
Yeah.
also it's like, that's some of the more genuine things. Like I love the guys that are on YouTube that I watch that I have confidence in because they're not trying to be something other. Like that's why
Mhm.
I've loved your channel, because it's like, hey, what Jonathan says is what he means. He doesn't mean anything else, and he's going to give you his, for the most part, unbridled opinion. Now, it's going to be extremely kind. So if he's
Yes.
even mildly negative, he's going to somehow, wrap it up real pretty. So that way it goes down a little easier.
Well, there's a couple of things with that. That is one of the most intentional parts of the channel,
Sure.
was the kind way, if I
Mm,
deliver criticism, because for one is, I don't want to be an unkind person, because that's just,
yes.
I don't want to be a
Mm,
jerk. That's the
you're
first
right.
part of it. The second part of it is, I'm not out to stop people from reading authors' books. I have
Mhm,
I have good friends whom are like really close with me, and I don't care for their books, but I love
mm,
them, so I want people to be reading their books. And so if I read a book that I don't love, I'm like, look, and even if I dislike it to the point of really disliking it, I want to be as respectful as possible
sure.
and make it about the material itself and not the person.
Right.
And there is a there, and it's very frustrating to me that there is a brand out there, particularly on YouTube right now. It is everywhere. That is this kind of rage bait, where if where the anger becomes part of the personality,
Mm,
where it is that you are not just you can't just review the book and talk about the book and say, this author included this, therefore I didn't like that he included it, but the rest of the book was entertaining.
Sure.
It becomes they included this author must be canceled. This author has gone
Yes.
woke. This author
Yes.
has and there's that
Whatever.
anger behind that. And I don't want to be associated with that brand
Mhm.
because A, those people don't make a lot of friends in the business, but B, it's that, like I'm called to be kind,
Right.
and I don't want people to see my negative review and think I'm attacking anyone. I'm
Right.
just saying this is why this didn't work for
Mhm.
me. And
Sure.
so like I'll even like one of my controversial stuff was like, I talked about this book a second ago, Pillars of the Earth.
Mhm.
Loved the book, had issues with it, but I
Yes.
try not to bash an author. I try
Right.
not to, make it personal at all. Which is it is especially funny when I negatively review a book and it's a friend of mine's because then I see them at conventions and I'm like,
Oh,
I'm
man.
so
Yeah.
sorry
Yeah.
that I
"How are
disliked
you?
the book.
I'm sorry. I
Yeah,
still love you. Just
I still love
not
you,
crazy
man.
about that."
And most authors are very I have had
Sure.
a few that were not so
Yeah. Well,
happy
I
with
can
me, but most
I
are.
can see I don't agree. I'll put it I wanna preface that. I don't agree that they should get upset about it, but I understand because you're looking at I mean, just for instance, this book right here, you're looking
Yeah.
at I mean, this is probably a couple of years of
Right.
hard work and time and effort and energy, and then only for somebody to then go, it's
Right.
like I understand how that could hurt because it would, I spend a couple hours on a YouTube video, and if somebody gets on there and is like,
Mhm.
"Hey, you stink and you're bald, and by the way, you've gotten fatter," it's like, okay, that kind of hurts my feelings a little bit.
Right.
But you know what? I'm gonna try to take that constructively if I
Yeah.
can. But it does, it does stay, and it might not be that extreme, but it could be something like, "Hey, I've noticed that your audio isn't as good," or "How come your
Yeah.
lights were flashing," or whatever, and then it's just like, oh, and then that's I don't think about the 800 other. I say 800. Nobody's commented 800 times on one of my videos, but
Challenge
the
accepted.
maybe my Wind and Truth one, but those were all fantastic comments. But I say that because like I get it, but yes, there does have to be some sort of that removal. It's like, hey, I'm talking explicitly about the product that you're putting
Yes.
out here, and I think that the author, if it were me, I'll put it that way. If it were me, I would rather have somebody be objective and say, "Hey, look, this book is great, and but." Right. And so I will take back what I said earlier, where the first book that I was sent and became part of an ARC team, somebody sent it out and they go, "Hey," it was an indie published book. They said, "Hey, would you be interested?" Absolutely. That'd be fantastic. I read the book. It was good. It wasn't great, and it was my first indie book I'd ever read. And so they said, "Hey, all we ask is that you post an honest, transparent review, blah, 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 blah." And so it was like a glowing review with a couple of exceptions. And the exceptions were like, "Hey, it just needed a little more editing," because the
Mhm.
times when I got pulled out of the story was when you had repeat words back to back. It says like, "And he, that." I'm like, okay, that just needed to be tightened up a little bit, because then it just pulled me out, and
Pulled
it
you
did
up.
that a few times, and it wasn't like once, because everybody does that.
Everybody has that.
Literally reading Christopher Rocchio today, and it was in there,
Yeah.
but it was pretty common. And so I was like, okay, this needs to be edited a little more. And then I got a message from the author, and he was like, "Dude, like, why are you being negative about my book? I'm trying to make a living doing this and all that." I'm like, "Did you read the rest of it? Like all of the because I really enjoyed the book, but you said to be
Mhm.
honest." "Yeah, but you put it was 4 stars." Well, it's
That's still a pretty good
yeah,
rating.
that's a good review for me. Like I'm
Yeah.
pretty positive. And then he was like, I just don't know if I appreciate that. And I'm like, well then, okay, I'm just gonna back up and punt. I'm like,
Mm.
well, thank you for your time and effort, but maybe I'm just not the guy for you then. But like, I don't understand that dynamic of like, how dare you? It's like, I'm talking about the product that you're putting out
Yeah.
there
And it
publicly.
is personal. Like a lot of authors, as you said, it's a long period of their life. It's their
Mm.
baby almost.
Yes.
So they're
Yeah.
like, oh man, it
Yeah.
feels
You're
like you're
bashing my
attacking,
kid.
you're bashing
Yeah.
my kids, so you're bashing me.
You just said my
And
kid's
so,
ugly.
which is why it's like a iron fist velvet glove. You have to be deft about it. And sometimes people are like, well, you're not, um hard enough on the authors. And I'm like, I'll say, the whole point of my review system personally is to talk about if I enjoyed the book, didn't enjoy the book, and
Right.
explain why.
Right.
And I'm really good about picking out books that I'm probably gonna enjoy. i'm
Hmm.
i'm pretty good about that. 90+% of my reviews are positive. Now, what level of positive, whether it was good, it was great, it was
Hmm.
amazing, that varies, but at least
Hmm.
I'm pretty good about that. But I'm if I just was going after the books that I getting angry about, or disliking, that would take the fun out of it for me. It
Yeah.
might get me some
Right.
good views, because
Yeah. Yeah.
negativity gets the
Yes.
views, but
Yeah. Let's chase whatever it
that's
costs for the algorithm.
yeah,
Let's go.
algorithm.
More
Exactly.
free books.
Right.
So
And
here's a question. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, go ahead. No, you go ahead.
So here, this makes me wonder, but
Mhm.
that was a very long me asking about editing. So do you ever watch your videos back? Like, and I don't mean like, okay, I edit it, but like after you hit publish, do you ever go back and watch it?
So, I go back and watch? No. Do I go back and listen? Yes. So
Okay.
what I'll do is I will go back, and it's usually because, what did I rank that again? I want to make sure I say the right thing in the next
Yeah.
video. So I'll just go back and be like, all right, what did I say for my top 10 science fiction? Or this also happens, which is I reviewed book 1 in the series last year,
Mhm.
and I read book 2 this year, and I'm
Oh.
like, what did I even think about the book? It's been a year. I don't remember. So I
Yeah.
go back and listen. I do it
Thanks a
for
lot,
that,
John Gwynn.
right? Yeah.
Those were circumstances outside of his control, and I get that. But man, between I read books 1 and 2 of Bloodsworn, and then there was like 2 years, and so I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, I have no idea what's going on in this book at all.
And so I sometimes do it for that, but it's usually, a lot of people say, yeah, I can't go back and watch myself on camera or
Mhm.
something. That's kind of it. And also, I'm like, I already said it. I don't want to go back and experience it again.
Sure, sure. So that's like because I'm editing it, and I'm editing like I'm doing nuance, and I like throwing in little memes and stuff like that in there because
Yeah.
it livens it up a little bit and it breaks up the monotony. But my wife is sitting beside me on the couch when I'm editing. Most of the time I try to have headphones in, and she was like, "Oh my goodness, can you please stop saying that one line over and over?" And so I've listened to it so many times that I'm like,
Right.
publish, it's done, and then move on.
Mhm.
So
So
here's
this is yeah,
oh,
I
I'm
was
sorry.
going to play. So my brother is a musician, and I lived with my brother for 3
Oh,
years.
me too.
We had a,
Yeah. Oh
we were
man.
in the same apartment, and my brother plays his music in the apartment, and we have very different tastes. But I heard all of his music over and over, and I love my brother, and
Yeah.
he's an excellent musician. He's trying to make it his profession. He's doing a good job with it. But they were like, "Why aren't you going to his events and stuff?" And I'm like, "Yo, I hear his music all the time. I don't need to hear it
Yes.
anymore." And that's
Yeah.
how I am with my videos. It's like, look, I
Sure.
spent so long filming that darn thing. I am not going back and watching that thing again.
So here's one that a couple of people have asked me. So do your family and or friends, do they watch your videos, or do they even know you have a channel, or
Oh yeah, it's very much a part of my personality, the
okay.
the, the reviews. Now in terms of family, my dad is a reader of John Grisham, CJ Box
Okay. Yeah.
books. So we read a few of the same books, but not a lot. And even then, we talk about the books. Like
Mhm.
outside, once I film my John Grisham review, I go and talk to my dad about it. So he's like, I don't need to go watch that. And he doesn't care about science. He doesn't care about science fiction
Yeah.
fantasy.
Son, I've heard you
Every
enough.
every once in a while, I'll go to my family and say, look, this video, I interviewed this really cool person. I want you to see it.
Mm.
Or I'll say, look, I talk about this. So like once in like a year or so, they'll watch a video. but they don't watch it too much. Ironically, it's more like friends
Mhm.
that'll watch it more. The creepy thing is when students find it.
Oh,
Oh,
no. Yeah, I'm sure. I'm
oh, that
sure.
was when my 5th and 6th graders, my 9th graders were cool about it last year. They were cool. They were like, okay, he has a YouTube channel. We watched it.
Mhm.
Okay. My 5th and 6th graders were like, let's spam the chat with skibbity toilet. And I was like,
That's
oh
so
crap.
awesome.
Oh
That's so
crap.
good. Again, that definitely would have been me. I'm so glad that was not around when I was in school, because we all would have been in trouble. And I know people
Yeah.
say that, but I definitely would have been. But like, so to sort of reciprocate, like, because I started the channel this year, I'd heard from so many people. They're like, do not tell people you have a channel. Do not tell people. Like, just, if people
Interesting.
find it, you'll find your audience, kind of thing. And of course, like, my close friends kind of knew, because they were
Mhm.
kind of the ones that spurred me on to get started or
Right.
whatever. But otherwise, I was fine. And then I had reviewed Red Rising. Loved the first book, loved the second book. Personally, DNF the third book. And I know some people are like, oh, it's just, I had that thrown up so many times at me. I was just sort of like, okay, I'm ready to just take a break from this. I don't want to be
Mhm.
preached at one way or the other. I want to read a book and have a good time with it. And so, I go to church Sunday after I'd put some videos out. Again, did not tell people that I had a channel.
Mhm.
And my pastor's wife, I'm a Reformed Baptist. And so my pastor's wife comes up to me, and she is the most kind, gracious woman. And she comes up and she was like, hey, I picked up that book you recommended. And I'm talking about books all the time in real life. And so I was like, oh, really? Which one? And she was like, Red Rising. And I was like,
You're like,
I
oh
was like,
no.
I go, like, yes, it was oh no in two directions. And like, I felt lowest of the low. I was like, okay, first of all, Red Rising, and second of all, you watch my videos. I was like, oh
I know I
no.
didn't tell you in person.
Yes. I was like, what did I say? Like, what in the world has she heard me say? Because I'm sure it's tomfoolery, to put nicely. But then but what was even more awesome is afterwards I was like, well, I described it as sort of like Gladiator and Hunger Games on Mars. And she was like, that sounds awesome. I'm like,
Right.
okay, like, my people, but
The
I was
funniest thing is when people that
horrified.
you would never expect to get into that genre, and then you're like, "Okay, I was not
Hmm.
expecting you to get into that,"
Yes.
like a pastor's wife. That is
Yeah, it's so funny. She was
very
like, I love to read.
unexpected.
I love reading that. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, like, I've got plenty more for you then.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Um, so,
Yeah, so you could be you could run a risk that, they'd be like, "Oh, man, look at that." But,
yeah,
if especially with the authenticity of if it's just you talking about the books, and especially with you is you're being upfront with this saying, "It has this stuff in it." You're
yes.
doing a service, and so a lot of people respect that, especially, in the reformed,
Sure.
realm. They respect that you are providing that service and you're upfront about it. So, like, yeah, I wouldn't be too worried about your friends or family knowing about
Well,
it unless they're gonna go and like spam the chat with something.
like, I am so glad. So I'm the youngest of three brothers, and we're very close. I'm so glad that they have not found this yet, because I would be like, I would probably have to delete my channel, because I know them. Because if I found out they had a YouTube channel about something, like, they rare or barely even know that I like to read, so I'm
Yeah.
just like, if they find it, I'm in trouble. But so that has that's interesting to me, because so many people have been on the other end of the spectrum saying, don't tell people, don't tell people. So, like, is other than like a particular book, have you ever been like, hey, I put this video out, like, you'll like this? Or I say, other than particular book or an author, have you ever been like, went to somebody and actively sort of promoted a video you've done, not for the sake of promotion, but been like, hey, I think you'll like this?
Yeah, I've
Okay.
certainly done that before. Like when I interviewed Les Johnson from NASA.
Mhm.
I was telling people about it mostly because it was like, I interviewed a NASA scientist. He
Yeah.
also writes books.
Yes, that's
So I've done
awesome.
that before. It usually is the interviews because that's the stuff that excites me, is getting to talk with the authors. But like, um, uh, sometimes like when something funny happens in a video, like, there was one video, I don't even remember which one it was now, but I recorded it, and when you're doing a big ranking and you're ranking like 50 books and you're stacking them and they all fall
Oh
over
no.
on you. Oh, it was so funny.
So,
And
there's a
so I
bit in the
recommended that to people because it was hilarious.
I think his name is it's Nev's book. He's over in the UK somewhere. He's a mature gentleman that reads science fiction and fantasy, and he posted a video the other day, and his thumbnail was, I mean, it was in like a blurred motion of this giant stack of books just like cascading down on him, you know. And I'm like, that is the most amazing thumbnail. So before I even watched the video, I'm like, okay, was that on purpose? And he just said, watch the video. And right at the end, he went to pick these things up, and he thankfully, like, just to add a little more entertainment, he played it in reverse. And so it showed him with all the, like, oh, all these books are just piled everywhere. And then they go, whoop, and they went back up on the stack. I was like, dude, that is genius.
Yes,
so
I love
good.
that.
Okay. So here's one you have a very large library. And so, if I was going to like pick on somebody, maybe pick on is the wrong terminology there,
but
if I'm like,
on me, it's fine.
Yes. I'm like, if I was to point to somebody and say, this is the person that I know has probably read more books than just about anybody else that I've heard of, it would probably be you. And so my question is, what are your thoughts? Because this is a big point of contention right now, but what are your thoughts on unfinished series? And particularly, I'll just name the two: Game of Thrones, Name of the Wind. Like, what are your thoughts? You know, because there's this idea of that people have where they're like, the author owes it to the audience to finish the work, and then you have sort of the flip side, like how do you feel about an unfinished series?
Okay, how much time do we have? I can go on this for a while. So it's really funny that you're not on Twitter, because this is what got me in trouble on Twitter a few months ago, was this topic. But here's what I'll say is that when you're an author, if you're writing for yourself, for your family, you don't owe anyone anything.
Sure.
And if you're an author and you write a book and it just doesn't land, and you're like, all right, I'm going to pivot to do something else. Sure. You don't owe the audience more of that exact series or more of that specific book. But there is an expectation in the publishing business that you, as an author, if your series gets successful, that you will finish that series. There is an expectation in the business that you have promised, especially if you go out, if you go out and write one book and then go out later on and write more. That's great. It's wonderful you did that. Tim Zahn wrote a standalone The Icarus Hunt, decided to write more books later. But because he never promised that he was going to write more books, it was a pleasant surprise. We weren't like, it's been 20 years, where's the books? It was just, oh, well, that's a standalone.
Sure.
But if you write a big series, and especially if that series takes off, and especially if you promise it's going to have this many books, and I'm working on the books, and then even further, if you go out and start saying, we're going to do this as part of the series, like calling out Rothfuss, we're going to do this special chapter for the
throw him right under that bus, buddy.
Or the more egregious one is that is there's that ums and uhs is with Martin, with George Martin. He has been promising for years, and he has the time, we know, and obviously he's worked on other projects, but he's turned in entire other books for other series. He has worked on TV shows. He has done all these things, and yet somehow can't seem to finish this main series that he's done. And I'm not saying that, like, legally he should be punished for not finishing the series, but you have an expectation with your audience that you've built, and you've promised them this, and now you're not turning in the audience. And if your books sales like start dipping a lot, and it's like, look, I would love to, but the publisher wouldn't let me keep publishing and they hold the rights to the books. We understand that. But when your books are successful and you've promised, and then it's especially egregious with those two because it affected other authors. This is where it gets tricky, is because now there is an entire generation of readers who are gun shy about big series. Why? Because Martin and Rothfuss kind of made these promises that they didn't fulfill, and they're like, oh, I'm worried that's going to happen now.
So Larry
And
Correa actually mentioned that in an
oh
interview
yeah,
recently, and you know how his dedication was to Martin in
yeah,
this
George
last book.
Martin.
Yes, and
Yeah,
he was
it's
like,
not that
"See, it's
hard.
not that hard, fantastic." So is Jordan over at iWizard, and he's like, "Was that like a jab at him at his character?" He's like, "Not at his character necessarily, but it was really and not even necessarily specifically to him, although it was really that he said I wanted to point that out is that." Now there's so many authors that we have lost during that time because people are not going to pick up a series until it's complete. And when you look at it, like for instance, Christopher Rocchio, I mean, he almost dealt with something very similar because he said, he got what, like three books in, and then the waters were kind of a little tumultuous. And then they said, "Hey, book 4, like we're going to kind of have to wrap things up a little bit with you because things aren't taking off and people aren't buying book 1." But everybody said, "Well, we're not buying book 1 until book 7 comes out because we want to
Right,
wait." And
right.
and Larry was like, "Yeah, but because of that, you have lost these authors as not as professionals, and
Yeah.
we may have missed out on some of the best stories we could have read."
It affected not just those authors, it affected the business, the publishing
Mm.
business, and, it makes it especially if you're a big name. Here's look at it another author is, my favorite fantasy series is the Rune Lord series,
Mhm.
and, it's not that widely read. It was kinda big at the time, and one thing that made it work real well is it was a 4-book series, and then the
Mhm.
author started doing more, and then he stopped. He had some personal stuff in his life. He said he was going to do more in the series, and then he died, and so he couldn't
Mm.
finish it, and it's really sad. I don't personally have the same level of ill will
Sure.
towards, or not ill will. I don't have the same level of frustration with that author.
Yes.
A, because I know there were actually legitimate stuff that it's like, look, he put down all of his books when that personal stuff happened, and he didn't have the huge readership that was
Mhm.
sitting on the edge of their seat
Yeah.
waiting. And him not turning in that book was not the thing that caused the business to hurt. Martin and Rothfuss
Mm.
particularly hurt the business. And they created an entire generation that are gun shy of picking up new authors,
Mhm.
and it hurt debut authors, and it hurt
Mm.
authors who are not the mega sellers. And so I'm like, yeah, you do owe it in a sense. And I'm not saying that you have to rewrite the whole series
Yes.
before you
Yeah, but look at Robert
publish.
Jordan. You mentioned him
Yeah,
before. Robert Jordan, he was like, "Look, I'm on my way out, and so here, like, if worst case scenario, here's how the story wraps up." And then thankfully, they're like, "Hey, we
Sanderson.
want to, yes, we want the story to be wrapped up."
And he
But
never had like a 10-year period of time while
right,
he was like,
right,
it would be different if he had, given us such a huge period of time where he was
or ran a
working on a single
fundraiser
book,
that
or
said,
run a
"Hey, I'll
fundraiser for it, or was writing TV shows, or was showing up to red
yeah."
carpets. Like if you
Oh
have personal
man,
stuff, if you have to
sure.
delay your book, and then also I understand you're trying to figure out what's going to happen with your book, but it does not take you 15 years to make a decision. It really doesn't, especially when people on pins and needles.
Well, that's what I heard. Sanderson say he met with um Martin at some convention or something like that, and he said they went out to dinner or something. He had quite
Mm.
a while ago, and he said, "Hey, let me ask you a question." To Sanderson, he said, "Okay, shoot." And he said, "Did you have you ever killed a character off and then realized, ooh, I shouldn't have done that because I had this other plan, and now I've written myself into a corner?" And he said, "No." And he was like, "Oh, me either." I
Yes.
definitely haven't done that. And then I think, with the show and the divisiveness of the show, I've heard, not to just dive too deep into that, but I've heard several things that the writers of the show actually kind of knew where the story was going, and that Martin said, "Well, you can't do that," or that perhaps another theory is that actually is the ending, and then it's met such a like revolting type of response that he's like, "Okay, well, now I don't know what to do." And I get all that. I would rather him and Rothfuss or whoever else is sort of particularly them two, to just say, "Hey, look, I have no idea, and I honestly don't know if I can finish it now because of blah 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 blah." I would
Right.
rather them just say that.
hmm I agree. And, um, a lot of people have just started saying, you know what? Well, I'm just going to go to authors who are at least
Mm.
proving that
Yes.
they're turning in their books. And this is why a new phenomenon that's really great is a lot of authors are doing updates on their
Yep.
writing saying, I
Yep.
am 10% done. I am 20%. I've written this K words in the book today. I've turned in Sanderson like popularized it,
Hmm.
but I've seen Rockio do something similar
Hmm.
on his channel.
Yeah. Ryan
I've
Cahill
seen
does the same thing.
Ryan Cahill, and I appreciate that because like if you need to take a few extra months or a year even
Yeah.
to edit it, that's fine. But by doing that, you're building that trust with the audience,
Yes.
and it's sad. It's really sad that we're
Mm.
at that point that we have to be counting the number of words you're writing per month. But
Yeah.
that's the way that we build back the trust.
Yes, yes, yes. It's amazing that people want transparency. Who would have thought?
And we don't
So,
and they don't have this issue in other genres. In if you
that's a good
read,
point.
a mystery series,
Yep.
most of those books are standalone-ish in this way that, you know what? If we don't get another book, this is still a fine
Yeah,
ending
it's fine.
point. Or,
Yeah.
you don't really have romance series that go on for 14 books, but
Yeah.
and there's not like 700-page books there. But yeah, fantasy sci-fi is in that special space
Mm,
where it's just kind of rough. And you promise something like this is to tie it into another thing with Star Wars.
mhm,
They had announced that they were kind of in the early stages of the this doing a trilogy of books for the in the EU. And
mhm.
that's when the switchover happened
Oh, yes.
and they went to
Mhm,
the canon and those got canceled. And that author, it was supposed to be Christy Golden. She's gone on and done a ton of other stuff. She's had a
mhm.
great career after this, including writing some Star Wars books. But those three books never surfaced. But because they were promised, there is still a contingent in videos that's
Mm.
and on Twitter and on Facebook that will say Sword of the Jedi trilogy. You still haven't done that yet. You promised us this, and it's like if you're gonna make that promise, people are not gonna let it
Sure.
go.
Right, you're right. Yes. And I don't blame them.
Yeah.
I don't blame people for doing that at all. So I, I'm going to try to wind us down a little bit just because I don't have the paid version of StreamYard. So
Just about
but,
longer than it was pretty good.
yeah, well, it's great. So I just a couple more like, is there a particular book or series that you started reading that made you go, I that hooked you? Like, I'm now a reader because of X book or series.
Yes, I can identify several. I'll start off with several books in the same
Mhm.
series, which is Star Wars. So if
Yes,
you're not a Star
right.
Wars person, I'm sorry. You're gonna have to. I'll get to the non-Star Wars stuff in a second.
If you're
With
not a Star
Star
Wars
Wars,
person, you don't know Jonathan Cohen.
yes. So Star Wars, the first Star Wars books I read that I was like picking up for myself were
Mhm,
Cloak of Deception, which was an adult
mhm,
book, even though I was like 12. Then I picked up the Young Jedi Knights books, which were
mhm.
amazing. And then the book that like officially I credited as I read that book in December 2015. And then ever since then, I've been reading regularly. That was a Star Wars book. It's not even a favorite, by the way. It was a Star Wars book that was Lords of the Sith.
Yeah,
Um,
uh-huh.
uh, so those were the books that like initially got me into just Star Wars. That was the only thing I was reading. Then I heard, hey, there's this author who writes fantasy that's very similar to Tolkien, but it's easier than Tolkien. And that
Mm,
was Terry Brooks, who wrote the Shannara
okay.
books.
Yep.
And so I said, I'll try that. And so I tried the first Shannara book and fell in love with his writing style. And that's what got me foot in the
Mhm.
door with
Sure.
fantasy. And then there's other authors for fantasy. And then for science fiction, it was I read Timothy Zahn's Star Wars stuff. I'm going to try reading his book Angel Mass. It's not even a favorite now, but
Hmm.
that was the book that got me into reading just pure science fiction.
Mm,
So there's several different genres, and I could talk about more, but those are the ones that like with the main three of tie-in fiction with Star Wars, with fantasy and sci-fi. Those genres that got me into reading, and it was mostly just because it was either I liked the series Star Wars, or it was I like the Star Wars stuff. I'll give them a try somewhere else.
yeah.
and that's stuff that got me into it, and it's going to be different for other people. There's
Sure.
going to be a lot of different books, which is why I'm like, look, I try to tailor it. If someone says I want to read, a fantasy, I don't just give them my favorite fantasy. I try to
Mm,
think, what's the
yeah.
type of
Right.
fantasy that's going to hook them? Because
Right.
if I give them the wrong thing,
Yep.
they're going to be turned off for a long time. I run
Yes.
the risk that they'll go far away.
Yep.
It's the reason that for instance, with my parents, my mom is not a fantasy person, not a nerd at all. She doesn't care about that stuff. But I was like, what can I recommend that she would like? I recommended Narnia. I like
Mm,
Narnia. It's not a
sure.
favorite, but I like
Yeah.
Narnia. But for her, I tailored that recommendation
Yep.
because I was like, I think that's what'll
Yep.
get her in. And she read it and liked it. So sometimes you have to be kind of like that. And it's like, look, this isn't a favorite of mine, but I think it'll be a favorite of
Yes.
yours.
That's what I've had several people since I've been reading be like, hey, I want to get into reading and I just don't know where to start. And so my question is always, what movies and TV shows do you like? And they're like, why
Yep.
does that
Yep.
matter? I'm like, okay, this is really gonna narrow my scope here. And then
Exactly.
I can start, okay, well, I think this may work for you. And let me give you a couple of options, go and read the description, and you'll kind of know. And so same with you. Like, I want to launch you into something that I'm almost certain you're gonna love. So that way you're hooked. I don't want you to start out reading something and go, wow, that was a waste of time.
Yeah, there's certain books that are like legitimate favorites of mine
Mhm.
that I don't recommend to a lot of people. Like my favorite science fiction novel is I'll pull it out, is Manta's Gift. It's a weird book, man.
Huh. I've
It
never
is
even heard of
about
it.
it's the premise of the book. Have you seen the Avatar movies, like the Blue
Yeah.
People
Mhm.
Avatar? So you know how he transfers the essence of him into an avatar, and then he ends up joining the avatars as they
Yeah.
fight against the bad guys. Well, this
Mhm.
book is he gets his essence transferred into a flying manta ray in Jupiter, and he ends up joining the other flying manta rays and
Huh.
fighting against the humans. So it's kind of like that weird book.
Yeah.
It's my absolute favorite science
Huh.
fiction novel, but I don't recommend it unless I'm sure someone's gonna love it because I'm like,
I'm writing it
it's a
down.
niche thing.
I know
But
people are like, he's
it's
not even paying attention. I'm writing that. I'm
it is
saving it.
it is weird. So you have
I'm
to be
good with weird.
careful.
Yeah, I'm good with
And
weird.
sometimes I have books that, I didn't even like.
Yeah.
Oh, hang on. Let me come up with it. So example. There's a book that I didn't particularly love this book, and it's The Bear and the Nightingale.
Mhm.
But I know a lot of my friends who are literary fiction people
Mm.
who I think, and like historical fiction, literary fiction,
Mhm.
and I'm like, this has a twinge of
Mhm.
fantasy, and it'll
Yep.
get them used to reading the
Yep.
fantastical in their books. And so I'm like, even though this book didn't work for me, I'm still going to recommend it.
Yeah. Sure. Sure. So, speaking so you've mentioned Ben Bova like a ton.
Oh,
So and I'm pretty like I've watched your videos where you're like, okay, this is
yeah,
probably where you need to start. So, but let's just say somebody has not seen this. If I'm
yeah.
wanting to get started into Ben Bova, where do I go?
You start off with Mars.
Okay.
That's his biggest seller, and it's the book that really put his where he started structuring his Grand Tour universe.
Mhm.
And so what you do is you can follow the planet that he's doing. If it's Mars, there's a Mars trilogy. So
Okay.
look for each of the Mars books. You could start with Jupiter. I don't recommend it, but you could. He also has some standalones. He has other series there, but Mars is the simplest place because
Okay.
if you read Mars and you like it, you will probably enjoy the rest of his
Mhm.
books because they slowly get more into the fantastical and
Mhm.
less the hard sci-fi. But because the hard sci-fi is there, I want to make sure that you're willing. Most people are willing to do the like when the in Jupiter there's aliens in Jupiter, and most people are willing to do that. But like the hard sci-fi stuff is a hard sell. So I'm like, start with Mars. I think that you'll be able to gauge whether or not his style works.
Okay. Cool. Well, it's on the list. I actually was at the library the other day, and I'm like, okay,
Mhm.
Ben Bova keeps standing out at me here, and so I'm gonna have to pick it
Like
up.
TV shows. If you like For All Mankind,
Okay.
or you liked The Martian.
Oh,
It's
loved it.
not, it doesn't have the humor of The Martian. It's
Sure.
not funny, but
Yes.
it has, if you liked The Martian, the
Mhm.
story, you'll enjoy Mars.
Okay,
That's
good.
that's how I'll say it.
Okay. I plan to have that read by the end of the year. The first book.
Hey.
Okay, yeah. So
Okay.
you've had me convinced.
Good.
So I know for you, this will be my last big question for you, because I would love to do just part two and us just make fun of each other or whatever for another couple hours. But so I know for the rest of this year, you're wanting to wrap up the EU of Star Wars, and
Yes.
you're like like you're on track to do so, which is
Yes.
wild to
Barely.
me. Yeah, I don't need I yes, it's wild to me. So, are there any other goals particularly that you have for the end of the year, which I know that's a big one.
Yeah.
And what are some that you've set for yourself for the next year?
Okay. I have not set any goals for next year. I am, boy, am I just trying to get
Plan.
through this year right now. Oh boy. Especially, with when all
Sure.
the job changeover, I
Yeah.
started thinking less full outlook. I still had the Star Wars plan because that was
Mhm.
planned at the beginning of the year, but I started going month by month, being like, all right, I'm just surviving here. I am going to try to finish a series by Jason Cordova that is the Kin Wars
Oh,
saga.
yes.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
try to finish that.
I
I
got
am
that
going.
ordered because you mentioned it. I was like,
Oh,
"Oh, that's on the
I love
list."
that so good.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try to finish that. I have a few. This is so bad. I have a few trilogies that I'm like, I read the first two books and I have a
Oh,
third
yeah.
book, and I'm just like, I just haven't gotten to it yet. I would love to 100% those, but they're big books.
Mm,
So I do
yeah.
that. And then I have a running list of new releases. And if I put a new release book on that list, then I am like it's gonna happen pretty much. And so
Mhm.
my goal is to make it through all those new releases. And then I have a video coming out either this week or next week. That's a book haul where I got a ton of books from LibertyCon, from indie authors.
Oh,
And I'm
man.
like, I need to get to the indie authors.
Yeah,
So I
sure.
am ramping up indie books later this year and certainly next year.
Okay. Well, cool. Cool. Good. All right. So I've got a couple rapid fire questions for you, and this is just one or the other. Okay. And some of them are difficult on purpose.
You're gonna ask me
Uh,
a Star Wars versus Star Trek question, aren't you?
Star Wars or Star
Everybody does
Trek's
that.
number
Yeah.
one, buddy.
Don't know.
Yeah, you have to
Why
pick.
choose? All right. If you make me pick, everybody does this. I
I
knew
know.
this coming.
Yeah, well, we have
If
to.
you make me pick Star Wars,
Okay.
but I still love Star Trek,
Yeah,
so I'm not
sure.
hating on it. But Star Wars is the main love.
Okay. So what's your favorite Star Wars novel of all time?
Ooh, Kenobi by John Jackson Miller.
Man, I just read that one. It's super good.
Oh, so
Super
good.
good. Okay. So favorite Star Trek novel.
Uh, I'm gonna sound repetitive. It's also by John Jackson Miller. It's
Well,
it's
he's a good author.
he's the one that got me into Star Trek books
Mm,
because I
mm.
was like, I like his Star Wars stuff. I'll give this a try.
Yeah.
It's probably Hell's Heart, which is the
Okay.
first in his Prey trilogy.
Okay. So, all right. So you've already answered your favorite science fiction novel. So
Yep.
what's your favorite fantasy novel of all time? If you had to pick one.
Oh, that's easy because it is my favorite novel, not just
Oh,
fantasy.
really?
It is my favorite novel of all time. It's Elantris by Brandon
Oh, really?
Sanderson.
Okay.
And
Okay.
it is, nobody else agrees with me,
I
but it
I
is,
loved Elantris. I loved it.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's,
I loved Raoden and stuff. The only like critique I had, I was like, man, I wanted more of that. I'm like,
yeah.
I loved a
Yes.
lot of the princess and stuff, but I'm
Mhm.
like this
The
guy is
Raiden
like a
stuff was so
literal
good.
zombie.
Yeah.
Let's go back to him rather than talk about her what she's having for dinner. Like,
So
let's
I loved all three storylines in here. There was
sure. Yeah, me too.
one scene. There was like, it's like 2 pages long that I didn't like, and I'll just say it's the sacrifice scene. That's the only. That's literally, if you cut those 2 pages out, I'd be like, all
Yeah.
right, it's perfect, perfect
Yeah.
novel.
Super good.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
All right. Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings?
oh man, should I say it? Okay.
Say
Books or
what's true,
movies?
not what
Different
people agree with you.
answers. They're
Oh,
different answers.
books. Books.
Okay. Books. Don't hate me, guys.
Dude, I'm
Harry
with you.
Potter.
I'm with you, brother. Movies is
Movies.
Lord of the Rings.
Lord of the
Yeah.
Rings. Clears.
Lord of the Rings is my favorite. It's my favorite movie of all. I count it as one movie. Like my little girl, she's 8 years old and she
Yeah.
can literally watch it on repeat. And of course, she's like, "Can we watch Lord of the Rings?" And I'm like, again. And she goes, "Extended editions." I'm like,
Okay.
proud dad moment.
Yeah, proud dad moment. Okay.
Okay.
I don't. It's not saying I dislike the Lord of the Rings books, but like when I don't include them on a
Yeah.
top 10, they're like, how can you not
Yeah.
possibly include them? And I'm like, look, I get why they're important.
Yep.
This is my favorites. It's
Yeah.
just not a favorite.
Yes. What? Yeah.
But the
Make your own
movies,
list.
best movies ever made.
Oh yeah. Yeah. 100%. All right. Apple or Android?
For phone, Apple.
Okay. I'm pretty sure we know the answer to this because we can see behind you. Paperback or hardback?
Oh, if money is no option, hardcover. For
Okay.
for display, it's for displays. I would love to have all hardcovers,
Yeah.
but I
Yes.
can't
I'm
afford
a
that.
hardcover nerd.
I can't afford to have all
Sure.
hardcovers, and so for displays, trade paperback works fine. Mass market
Yeah.
works fine. For reading physical, depending on how long the book is,
Mm,
I like reading mass markets because
sure.
they're smaller, they're not as heavy, they feel good in the hand, or I actually really like. I know people who hate this. I love it. So you have regular mass markets,
Yep.
and then you have the tall rack where it's like just slightly above
Yep.
the mass market. I love the tall rack.
I like them
That's
if they're
my
consistent.
if they're
If they,
consistent. Yeah.
oh man, when
Okay.
they
Yeah, if they're
change
not
midway,
consistent.
I'm like, I want to burn something.
But like I like my John Grishams as tall racks.
Sure.
Oh, they're so good.
Okay. Audio or ebook?
Neither.
Oh.
Never.
I will say, so I listened to Kenobi and the audiobook for that because
Jonathan
they had
Davis is
like
great.
yes, and the sound effects and they had music. It was like watching the movie. It's I can't recommend it enough. Fantastic.
Mhm.
Okay. So one more rapid fire. Favorite nonfiction book?
Ooh. Do I want to get canceled right now? Is the question. Because, well, okay. First two things.
Well,
I
edit in
assume
post.
we're just saying the
Yes.
Bible.
Yes.
Obviously.
Okay. Other than
Other than the
that's
Bible.
different class.
Okay, different class. Okay. Ooh. Because nonfiction is so broad.
Yep.
I have so many. Okay. I know we don't have much time. Let me get it quick. I loved the biography of two biographies. I love the biography of H.W. Bush by
Ooh,
John
okay.
Meacham, and I loved the autobiography of George W. Bush. I loved those. So for my biographies, it'd be one of those. I also loved Nancy Percy, who is usually writing in religious spheres.
Mhm.
She wrote the book Total Truth, was not a favorite.
Mhm.
She wrote Total Truth, which was great, but she also wrote the book Love Thy Body. Phenomenal book.
I haven't heard of that one.
It is.
I'll add it to the list.
It's about politics.
Okay.
So if you don't want to get into politics, guys, readers, just it's a political. It's political book from a Christian worldview perspective.
Sure.
Fantastic book. Love Thy Body. So good.
Okay. Well, so I'm going to add one that just popped in because we're brothers, we're kinsmen. Which version of the Bible? Oh, let's just throw some gas on there. But now I've got some KJV only guys. I've got guys that are straight up ESV and all this. And so but if you like, okay, this is my version or not, you know what I mean? This is my preferred reading version.
The Message. I'm just kidding.
No. Never again.
No, never. I would never read The Message. No, ESV.
Okay, yeah, ESV.
I mean,
so
I have NIVs at the house and stuff, but ESV is usually.
I was an ESV guy for a long time, and my pastor just recently turned me on to the Legacy Standard, which is like ESV.
I've never heard about that.
It's there's like God's names are very intentionally mentioned, like and separated, which I like. Plus, I just want to follow along with him. I don't like having a different version personally, but anyway. And so, one final question that I do have is, what would be a piece of advice that you would give to young or new creators to YouTube?
Publish consistently and have decent audio. If you have those
Yes.
two things, your video will be fine. Your video quality does not have to be amazing, and like your editing skills don't have to be amazing. But if you publish consistently and you have decent audio, it doesn't have to be amazing, but decent audio,
Mhm.
that's what gets it.
Well, man, thank you so much for coming on. I super appreciate it. It's been
Absolutely.
super fun. I love getting to nerd out about all kinds of stuff with you. So hopefully we get to do it again sometime, and even if it's not recorded or where we can just goof off sometime. But man, just thank
Absolutely.
you so much for taking the time. Thank you for just being not just a friend, but a friend of the channel, but like genuinely one of the first few comments that I got was like, "Hey, this is really interesting and different," and it just man, it really helped. It really helped
Oh,
when I was like, okay, I don't know what I'm doing,
thanks so
So
much
just
for inviting me.
thank you so much. It's been tons of fun. Thank you all for those of you who have stuck around and watched and listened to us ramble. I hope you guys got something out of it, at least a couple of chuckles. And yeah, thank you again. And hopefully we'll see you again soon. Appreciate you guys.
I'm gonna take